In part 3 of our recap of the entire God of War franchise, we covered the events of the first game in the series, talking about Kratos' final confrontation with Ares and his ascension to the throne of God of War. In part 4, we're going to take a look at the PSP title Ghost of Sparta. After having killed Ares and replaced him as the new God of War, you'd think Kratos' life would get easier, but of course that is not the case. Because though the gods of Olympus forgave him for his past sins and made him a god, they refused to rid him of his nightmares. As such, when Ghost of Sparta starts off, not long after the ending of the original God of War, the Spartan is still being haunted by visions of his past, though the things he's seeing now are a little different. In his visions, Kratos is seeing his mother, who has been dead for years, locked away in the Temple of Poseidon in the city of Atlantis, calling out to her son. Kratos decides that he needs to investigate these visions, and despite warnings from Athena to not do so, he sets off for the city of Atlantis. However, it seems the Olympians do not want him to succeed in this mission. As Kratos travels to the city, he is attacked by the forces of Poseidon, the god of the seas, and the king of Atlantis, as they attempt to stop him in his tracks. Among Poseidon's forces is the fearful gigantic sea monster known as Scylla. The Scylla, as you may have put together, functions as the trademark opening God of War set-piece boss battle, a multi-legged fight between Kratos and the beast that continues as Kratos traverses from the sea to the land to the city of Atlantis. Ultimately, Kratos is successfully able to beat Scylla, to no one's surprise, at which point he makes it to the place he's been seeing in his visions more and more lately, the Temple of Poseidon. When he goes inside, he sees his mother, Callisto, frail and dying. As Kratos first lays his eyes on Callisto, he refuses to believe his eyes, believing it to be another treacherous vision sent to him by the Olympians. He believed his mother to be dead for a long time after all. However, she tells him that she never really died and that she was brought to this place in secret. And then she tells Kratos why she'd been calling out to him. His brother, Deimos, is still alive. Remember how we talked about Deimos in part 1 of this series? Ares took him captive when him and Kratos were still children in Sparta, since Zeus believed him to be the marked warrior of prediction who was destined to overthrow him. And while for all these years Kratos has been living under the impression that his brother was dead, Callisto tells him that Deimos has been alive this whole time. He's been captive in Death's domain, where he is constantly tortured by Thanatos, the god of death. Callisto then apologizes to Kratos for having hidden this for so long. She tells him that she was brought to the Temple of Poseidon in secret by Kratos' father. Kratos asks who his father is, but of course he doesn't get the answer he's looking for. We'll be speaking more about this in future parts of the series, but chances are you know already. Just as Callisto is about to tell Kratos who his father is, she writhes in pain, screams in agony, and transforms into a horrific beast as the result of a curse that has been put on her. Kratos is then forced to fight off his own mother, and after a thrilling boss fight against Callisto's crazed beastly form, he manages to break the curse. A weakened Callisto thanks her son for freeing her from her curse, begs him one last time to save his brother, telling him that to find his brother he needs to head to the old Temple of Ares in Sparta, and finally she dies. So yeah, technically now Kratos has killed yet another family member. As you can probably imagine, Kratos doesn't take this all too well. He screams in rage, furious at the constant deceptions, and resolves to rescue Deimos from Thanatos. Before he heads off back to his homeland of Sparta, Kratos puts something momentous and drastic into motion. On his way out of Atlantis, he encounters Thera, a titan who was imprisoned by Poseidon in the core of a volcano outside of Atlantis after the end of the Great War. Thera tells Kratos that Gaia, the mother of all titans, has been watching over him and claims that he will be the one to set free the titans from their captivity. This is something that will become more of a focus in future parts of the series. Though Kratos puts no stock into that prediction, he does end up freeing Thera. She breaks from her chains, causing a large eruption in the volcano around them, and the resulting destruction has a devastating effect on the city of Atlantis. The entire cityscape is destroyed, crumbled, and then flooded, turning it into the mythical lost city of Atlantis we refer to as today. Yeah, the implication is pretty ridiculous and also extremely cool, that it was as a result of Kratos' own actions that the city of Atlantis was destroyed and sunk into the ocean. Kratos continues on his path to Sparta, leaving the sunken remains of Atlantis behind. On the way, he encounters Erinys, the daughter of Thanatos, the god of death. For obvious reasons, Aranus doesn't want Kratos to succeed in his mission, and as such, the two of them engage in a duel. The fight against Aranus undoubtedly has to rank among the most spectacular, action-packed, and cinematic boss battles in the entire God of War series, and it ends as Kratos, predictably enough, kills his foe. Finally, Kratos arrives in Sparta, where the people have started to revere him and spread his praises, seeing as the man who was once one of their own has now killed a god and become one himself. At the Temple of Ares, he witnesses a statue of the fallen god being torn down by a group of Spartan soldiers, led by a man who goes on to be referred to as the Last Spartan, and replacing it with a sculpture of Kratos himself, their new god of war. As Kratos enters the temple, though, he witnesses some strange occurrences. Kratos encounters a vision of his younger self, of the child he used to be when Deimos was taken away by Ares all of those years ago. The past vision of himself moves to attack him, but once the Ghost of Sparta subdues it, he learns what he must do. He needs to travel to Death's domain, which of course is where Deimos is being held captive, and rescue his brother. To do that, he's going to have to travel back to Atlantis, which is where the entrance to the domain is hidden. Before Kratos leaves, the last Spartan, who is a devout follower of the new god of war, presents him with the arms of Sparta, the weapons that Kratos used to possess and defeat countless enemies before he pledged himself to Ares, and was equipped with the Blades of Chaos, which of course have been replaced by the Blades of Athena by this point, since the previous swords were stripped away by Ares in the final fight against Kratos. Kratos accepts the offering, and soon after he takes his leave. His voyage to Atlantis is not without its own dangers. While he's on a ship that's sailing over the remains of the city, Kratos is attacked by Poseidon's forces, who destroy the ship and kill the crew. The ship sinks, obviously, but Kratos narrowly manages to escape being drowned and soon finds himself on land again. Soon after, Kratos runs into the remains of a large statue of Poseidon, and the god of the seas talks to the Ghost of Sparta through it. Just as Athens was the city of Athena, the underworld was the domain of Hades, and Sparta was under the protection of Kratos himself, the city of Atlantis was the city of Poseidon, and understandably enough, he is not pleased with what has become of it. With the huge hand that Kratos played in its destruction, Poseidon is furious at the Ghost of Sparta, and tells him that he will make him pay for what he has done. Kratos and Poseidon do square off in an absolutely incredible one-on-one duel later on in the series, making this build-up all the more important. But let's not talk about that final confrontation between these two just yet. Ignoring Poseidon's threats and warnings, Kratos pushes onward, traversing through the ruins of Atlantis in his search for the entrance to Death's domain. But as he does so, he encounters a mysterious and familiar figure from his past. We are of course talking about the Gravedigger, who, as we explained in the previous part, is none other than Zeus in disguise, unbeknownst to Kratos, of course. The Gravedigger informs Kratos that the path he's walking is going to lead nowhere good, and warns him to turn back now while he still can. As you might have put together from everything we've spoken about so far, the gods of Olympus seem hell-bent on stopping Kratos from finding Deimos, and Zeus's warnings to Kratos as the Gravedigger is yet another example of them trying to turn the Spartan away. But Kratos, of course, has no time for these warnings. He ignores the Gravedigger and presses on, until he finally locates the entrance to Death's domain. And there, Kratos finally sees Deimos, tortured and horribly scarred, but somehow still alive. The reunion of the two brothers, though, doesn't go as planned. Deimos tells Kratos that as his older brother, it was his job to protect him, and that he hates him for having failed to do so. Years and years of captivity and torture have built up to a huge amount of burning resentment within Deimos. The two brothers engage in a brutal fight, and in a fit of fury, Deimos beats Kratos to within an inch of death. The fight between the two, however, is cut short, and before Deimos can deliver his brother a final, killing blow, Thanatos, the god of death himself, and Deimos' captor for all of these years, arrives on the scene. He grabs hold of Deimos as a battered and weakened Kratos lies on the ground, and tells the Ghost of Sparta that he is going to suffer for killing his daughter Aranus. With Deimos in his grasp, he flies away, with the heavily injured Kratos giving chase. They land at a place that has a great deal of significance in the God of War universe, to Kratos more than anyone else. They land at the Suicide Bluffs, the highest point in all of Greece and the same place where Kratos had tried to jump to his death not so long ago. Thanatos pushes Deimos over the edge, who hangs on the ledge, and just as his grip is about to slip and he's about to plummet to his death thousands of feet below, Kratos manages to pull him back up. Kratos offers him his hand, and Deimos takes it, standing up to face his brother. Faced by insurmountable odds and realizing that they're going to have to fight a god of Olympus, the two brothers put their differences aside. Kratos tells Deimos that he is not going to lose him again and offers him the arms of Sparta, which had been given to him by the last Spartan, telling him that the fight is not yet over. And so the two brothers join forces once again, together taking on Thanatos in a final battle. Thanatos talks about how Deimos was taken captive all of those years ago because Zeus believed him to be the marked warrior who, according to prediction made by the Sisters of Fate, was destined to bring about the destruction of Olympus. The god of death realizes that capturing Deimos was, as it turns out, a mistake, since the marked warrior of prediction was actually his brother Kratos. He tells Kratos that he's been played for a fool by the Olympians, and that he has no idea what they have planned for him, something that he's been told countless times in the past by countless other people. All that, however, counts for very little as per Thanatos, as he has every intention of killing both Spartan brothers in one go. As the fight progresses, Thanatos takes the form of a terrifying black monster in order to turn the tides in his favor, and it almost works. Though Kratos is able to defeat Thanatos, the god of death manages to get a few good hits in as well, and ends up killing Deimos, this time for good. The death of his brother, having to lose Deimos all over again after just having managed to rescue him, enrages Kratos to no end, and in a fit of fury he successfully kills Thanatos. With his brother's body in tow, Kratos travels to the top of the Suicide Bluffs, a place he's become very familiar with by now, and there he encounters the mysterious Gravedigger yet again. Cryptically enough, he's already dug a grave for Deimos. The two of them bury the dead Spartan, and Kratos plunges the arms of Sparta in his grave, using them as Deimos' grave markers. He walks to the edge of the cliff, and with a foot dangling over the edge in a scene that is very reminiscent of the first God of War, he ponders suicide yet again. However, he knows by now that even suicide is not an option for him, and as such, he puts his foot back onto the ground. Reflectively, he ponders the man he's turning into, asking himself, "What have I become?" In the background, the Gravedigger ominously tells him that he has become Death, the destroyer of worlds. Words that will ring very true in the future. At this point, Athena arrives on the scene, telling Kratos that now that he has let go of all which made him mortal, he can now finally ascend to full godhood. As she offers greater powers to Kratos, the god of Sparta refuses and turns away. The revelations that he's made about his mother, brother, and the death of Deimos have all driven him to the point of insatiable rage, all of which is aimed at the gods of Olympus. He feels he is constantly betrayed and played for a fool by the Olympians, and he's vowed that Olympus will pay for what it has done to him. Kratos leaves, returning to his throne as the god of war. God of War 2, it is assumed, picks up where Ghost of Sparta ends, with an embittered and angry Kratos sitting upon his throne, hungry for revenge against the gods of Olympus. Kratos declares war on his fellow gods, using his Spartan army to lead a bloody conquest all over Greece. As his armies sweep over the land and cities fall before their might, the gods start growing fearful of Kratos' bloodlust and ruthlessness, just as they had with Ares before him. Things finally come to a head as Kratos' Spartan army lay siege to the city of Rhodes in the opening stages of God of War 2. And that's where we're going to leave Part 4. When we come back for Part 5, we will cover the momentous and fateful events of God of War 2, which lead into the final act of Kratos' bloody tale. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from Gaming Bolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.